This afternoon, the youth of Nalerigo continue to pitch camp at the palace of the Mamprugu overlord following a failed military operation last night to arrest the king and a man who skinned a Bokonaba. The youth are vowing to resist any further attempt to arrest the two traditional leaders. Earlier this dawn, the youth went on a rampage vandalizing the police station and the office of the NPP. They blocked all major roads, including the Tamale-Bolga Highway, burning tires and vandalizing state properties in response to attempts by the military to arrest the newly installed chief and the overlord of the Mamprugu traditional area last Sunday.
The military forces arrived in Nalerigo at midnight, armed with loaded rifles in 4 armored vehicles and a pickup truck. They went straight to the house where the newly enslaved Bokonaba is being hosted. But before they could get there, dozens of highly charged youth of Nalerigo had already encircled the whole house to protect the Bokonaba from any arrest. The soldiers with their guns attempted to access the compound, but were strongly resisted by the youth, who had formed a human shield to repel the military invasion. After observing the chaos for a while, the helpless military retreated and headed towards the palace of the Mamprugu overlord. The soldiers, however, could not get anywhere near the Nairi as they were confronted by another set of marauding youth. The irate youth blockaded all the roads leading to the Nairi and began throwing stones and other objects at the approaching soldiers, forcing them to retreat again, and subsequently fled from the town towards the Regional Coordinating Council building. After defeating the military operation, the youth returned to the palace to stand guard and vowed to protect the king with their blood, sweat and tears. But before that, they burned tires on the road, raided the police station and vandalized the regional headquarters of the ruling New Patriotic Party, accusing the MPP and the government of taking sides in favor of their rival Kusases. They spoke to JoyNews.
We, the youth of Nalerigo, we are not going to accept this. And we are calling on authorities that are in charge of this to stop it, because they shouldn't take our peaceful nature for granted. For all over, they know that Mamprugu is a peaceful place. But for this time, what they are doing, we are not going to accept it. And if they continue this way, in fact, what they want, it will not be good.
We have heard that the Upper East Regional Minister and then his cohorts, the MP of Bawku, Mama Yarga, and then the Avoka have said that if the Northeast Regional Security Council failed to apprehend the overlord of Mamprugu, His Royal Highness Bawku, then they would send their Kusas military people to arrest, to come and apprehend them. And indeed, we picked the signal when the military convoy left Bolga, and we had followed them until they entered in Nalerigo. We are warning them. We are warning the authority. We are warning the authority. The Mamprugu is bigger than what they think. The president, we are warning him. Mamprugu is bigger than what they think. They should not try us. If they don't want a full-blown war, they shouldn't try us.
Yes, same thing. We are ready to fight what is coming. It isn't that we are afraid. That's good. We are not afraid. It isn't that no one is more. We are all mature. We are ready to fight.
We are live in that town. We'll be going there shortly. Arman Eliaso Tanko will be bringing us more on the developments there. Right now, President Akufo-Addo has joined the millions of mourners eulogizing former Black Stars player Christian Atsu. In a tweet shared on his Twitter handle a while ago, the president said, and I quote, "I extend sincere, heartfelt condolences to the widow, children and family of our fellow Ghanaian Christian Atsu on the sad news of his death. Ghana football has lost one of its finest personnel and ambassadors, one who will be difficult to replace. He will be sorely missed. May his soul rest in the bosom of the Almighty until the last day of resurrection, when we shall all meet again. Amen. Unquote. Now, the mortal remains of the hair sport player arrived in Ghana last night, nearly 2 weeks after the earthquake, which has now claimed thousands of lives in Turkey and Syria. Christian Atsu was officially confirmed dead on Saturday. Yes, how Joy Sports covered arrival of his remains at the Kotoka International Airport last night.
13 years after leaving for a football trial in Portugal on a passenger flight, Black Stars winger Christian Atsu arrived back in Ghana on a cargo flight. The death of the 31-year-old winger, who celebrated his birthday 6 weeks ago, was confirmed in the early hours of Saturday morning when his lifeless body was discovered under the rubble of his house, following the devastating earthquakes which hit Turkey and Syria. The winger's body was under the rubble for 12 days before its retrieval, cutting short a football career which started with one big promise.
And I think this should inspire footballers, what I'm going to say. I remember on the first day that he had to take the first flight to FC Porto. I was at this airport to see him off. And when he sat on the plane, he actually sent me a text message saying that, Mr. Yate, I really appreciate you. I'm not going to return. I'm going to succeed on these trials. He was left with 10 days for the January window 2010 to be over. And he said he was going to succeed. He was going to make me proud. He was going to make himself proud. He was going to play football to the highest level. And the world will hear the name Christian Atsu.
Abdul Hayate was the man who discovered Christian. Atsu's career kicked off with Yate at Cheetah FC before jetting off for a football trial in Portugal in 2010. And some 2 years later, he will be scouted by Kwesi Appiah, Black Stars head coach, who handed Atsu his national team debut.
I spotted him through a friend. So what I did was to follow him, watch his game. After some time, I gave him a call that I'll be inviting him to our national team. But one thing that I always tell players is don't prove anything to me, but prove to Ghanaians. And I think Atsu proved to all Ghanaians that he actually deserved to be in the national team.
And yes, he did, because on his Black Stars debut, the then 20-year-old scored and assisted in Ghana's rout of Lesotho in the AFCON qualifiers. He was adjudged player of the tournament while winning goal of the tournament alongside in his first AFCON campaign in 2015, where Ghana lost the final to Ivory Coast on penalty. He was received at the Kotoka International Airport by his family, headed by Nene Trasam. The family made no announcements of any funeral arrangements, but there's a state-level promise to ensure the final goodbyes are memorable.
It is a painful loss, a very painful one. But as the good Lord says in the good book, that from him we came and to him shall we return. We pray that the soul of Christian Atsu rests in perfect peace in the bosom of the Lord. Thank you very much. And I would like to say that the state will be fully involved with the family in providing him a befitting burial.
Off the pitch, Atsu touched the lives of many with a wide repertoire of philanthropy, from paying school fees down to buying 5 cedis worth socks for 200 cedis.
I remember one day in the Black Stars camp, he was just solemn. One morning, I saw him sitting alone, as usual. Some of the players, particularly Jordan Ayew, will come bothering him. Jordan Ayew and Wakasu, they used to mess about with him a lot. You're a villager. Why do you wear this watch?
The same thing
on social media. It's the same thing they do in camp. And he was mute. He said he had heard that somebody who was planning to help carry out an operation at the Colombo Teaching Hospital died. It broke his heart. And there are millions of stories he never tell you. So one day I would ask him, when, a lot of people had said that, the Black Stars players were not giving and all of those things. He told me that I do this thing for God. I don't do it for humanity to praise me.
Former Chelsea captain John Terry was first amongst the notable football personalities to extend his commiserations to the fallen Black Star. Condolences by Ghanaian football personalities were led by Mohamed Kudus, the Ajax midfielder converted a free kick in the side's 4-0 win over Sparta Rotterdam and took off his shirt halfway to reveal a RIP Achu inscribed on his undershirt, but he wasn't penalized by the referee. Meanwhile, Black Stars captain Dede Ayew issued a statement indicating he was devastated because Christian was a good, genuine and selfless individual who put smiles on faces of those he encountered. Former Black Stars captain Asamoah Gyan hasn't stopped posting old comedy skits he and Achu shots in the Black Stars camp, but all of that was preceded by a RIP brother tweet, and close friend Mubarak Wakasu also tweeted, "Rest well."
Former assistant coach of the Black Stars, Maxwell Kunedu, has been explaining how Christian Achu was discovered.
Good morning, Amina. Good morning to your listeners too. When this issue came up, I wasn't in the face to post anything about Christian Achu. I see a lot of pictures, a lot of stories around flying here and there, and I wasn't happy. I didn't want to even read anything. I just wanted to hear that he was okay. We were all praying and hoping that some way, somehow, Achu will be found alive. But when the news finally broke out that he wasn't part of us anymore, in fact, I cried at home. He's a guy I know very, 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 very well. Initially, from the beginning, when my former boss, Kwesi Apia, told me about Achu, and then we scouted him. I remember Bawku bringing his clips to me. I looked at Christian Achu. He was done in Portugal, I think.
Yes.
I watched him and I said, "How is this boy a Ghanaian?" So I put a bit of a pressure on my boss to bring this boy. And when he came, Ghanaians were all happy. Kwesi Apia brought Achu to the national team.
Yes.
We won that match massively at the Massive Sports Stadium, and from then, it became a household name in the industry. He was an instant hit. Apart from that, he never gets angry on the field of play. I remember quite well that when we were in Miami and at the training ground just before the 2014 World Cup, he had a misunderstanding with one player. I don't want to mention his name. And later, he got angry and wanted to, he was throwing his hands about that he would even leave and go home. And I went to his room and, spoke to him, and finally he was laughing. So you could see that when anybody gets angry, there's...
Former Black Stars goalkeeper Fatau Dauda has also affirmed the quality Christian Achu brought to the team.
We love Achu, but Allah loves Achu more than we love Achu. And I remember 2012 when he came to play for the Black Stars. I was with Ashgood. I left Kumasi to Kumasi, about 45 minutes drive to go and watch the game. And after the game, people were talking about Achu, and then said, "No, we have a talent, and we have a great player." People have been talking about him since then. But by then, I wasn't in the Black Stars. But the same year, late 2012, I joined the team. I remember we went to play some qualifying, and then we went ahead to play in the AFCON. So I played with Achu in 2013, 2014, 15, 16, 17. I played with him. I played in the AFCON with Achu in 2013 in South Africa when I had the chance to play in Go. And then we played in the World Cup too. And then 2015 AFCON when we came second. Then 2015 AFCON, and then I left the national team. So Achu is someone I know. I remember when we went to the national team, he told me he lives in Medina before when he was young. I remember when I was They used to come and sit behind our pole to pick balls for us. He said it, and then I asked a friend, they said, yes, it's true. So actually someone I know very well. I remember early last year, he bought a perfume for me.
Away from Christian Achun, may his soul rest in peace. Ghanaians must brace themselves for one of the harshest weather conditions in recent times as the Ghana Meteorological Agency forecasts intense dust haze over the entire country throughout the day, with implications for road safety, the environment and health. Felicity Afianyo is head of Central Analysis and Forecasting Office of the agency.
We have the source of the dust over the Sahel region that normally, when it's lifted, it gets transported and then moved down over the West African sub-region and then affects Ghana because we are also part of the West Africa. And we have it in stages. We have the first best, the second, and then the third. For 2022-2023 episode, we are having almost all the three best that we have experienced so far reaching the coastal belt. One interesting thing that we spotted on one of our satellite, internet-based satellite prognosis charts is that we are identifying another source where we are having these air results also coming in, added on to the dust that are being raised from the Sahel regions moving down to us, which is compounding our situation over the southern sector. So for us, we will say that yes, we're having the minute particulate in suspension in the atmosphere, but then the composition is what we cannot be able to label to everybody to understand.
Okay. Now, many people will say they have not seen this harshness with their naked eyes for some time. Is this how it's supposed to be?
Normally, we still have to be in it, but then when it comes to the coastal strip, because of the ocean, we are bonded by the ocean, we have the moist wind coming in. So that's losing the harshness for us. But unfortunately, this year, the wind were not too much. It has reversed quickly, and then allowing the dry winds to penetrate, to take over. So the moist wind was not able to override the dry winds, and then to give us some sort of turbulence, and then leading to cloud formations, and then giving us some reasonable rains within the period. But then, rather, the dry, cold wind has dominated, giving us all the conditions that we are experiencing.
The World Health Organization, the U.S. Department of State, has issued similar warnings urging people to take precautions to protect their health. The dust haze can cause respiratory problems, especially for those with underlying health conditions such as asthma. Chief Executive Officer of the Environmental Protection Agency has been speaking on the development to us prior to the news conference the agency is scheduled to address.
It's getting too hazardous. I mean, since from 16th, 15th February coming, it has not been the best. Vehicle emissions remain a major driver to this problem. So the simple thing is to ground down because of our vehicles, if we are to do so. And I can't foresee how the country is ready and prepared. We have a lot of rickety vehicles in the system that are polluting all around. And even state institutions vehicles, individual, commercial vehicles that we have. So EVLA together with EPA has the vehicle emissions testing strategy and plans that we need to implement. We have standards that has been prepared by the Ghana Standard Authority. But the challenge remains as I speak, or as we are all asking. 2/3 of our vehicles are not road healthy. I mean, the emissions levels are just unacceptable. So it's a conversation that needs to be opened up for the entire nation to come face to face with. Are we able to ground these vehicles, allow for new ones to be in them, and then we continue to monitor from? Or we go back to walking, use of bicycles, and those mobility that do not.
We can now go back to our earlier story of the youth of Nalerigo that continue to pitch camp at the palace of the Mamprugu overlord following a failed military operation last night to arrest the king and the man he enskined as Bawku. The youth are vowing to resist any further attempt to arrest the two traditional leaders. My colleague Eliasa Tanko has joined us via phone with more. Eliasa, what's the latest as far as the Nalerigo disturbances is concerned?
Well, the youth are still pitching camp at the forecourt of the Mamprugu overlord. They are insisting that they are willing to protect the king and the newly enskined Bawku from any arrest. And so as to speak, they have mounted barricades on the road leading to the Mamprugu overlord palace. And they are currently there because according to them, they heard that the military will be coming back. So they said they are waiting for them at the chief palace.
So as we speak, has the police what has the police been telling you? Because we hear that they had vandalized properties at the police station.
Well, it appears that there is some spontaneous reaction to this last night's action by the military, because as I speak to you now, the youth of Wale Wale are also on the street, burning ties and blocking the roads, blocking traffic, especially on the main Tamale-Bolaga highway. As we are learning, the police are struggling to deal with the situation, especially the one in Wale Wale. But for the vandalism that the youth caused yesterday, the police are yet to comment on it.
Has there been any word from the regional security council yet, led by the regional minister?
Not at all. The regional security council is also yet to comment on this particular matter.
All right, Eliasa Tanko is our man monitoring events for us, and as you heard him speak, there's still chaos in that town, and the youth are still burning ties and vandalizing property. We'll definitely bring you more as they trickle in. Now, former Finance Minister Dr. Kwabena Dufo says government's economic management should be dissolved and reconstituted. The team, led by Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, with Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta as a member, takes crucial decisions on how the Ghanaian economy should be managed. Dr. Dufo says government's handling of the recently concluded domestic debt exchange is evidence of the need for new hands to manage affairs.
Well, the issue is not about debt treatment. It's about a real restructuring of the economy. Make sure inflation goes down, the bank borrowing cost goes down, domestic resource mobilization picks up quickly, so that we rid the country out of aid dependency and safeguard our national sovereignty. Debt treatment, yes, but that alone will not solve the problem. You understand? Yeah.
I mean, one person who had cause to participate in this protest surrounding the debt exchange was the former Chief Justice, and
yeah,
she told us that as far as she's concerned, she thinks the Finance Minister has not performed well at all. Do you share that assessment as well?
I think so. The former Chief Justice has made a point. How did you get to this point? I talked about the fact that for 8 years, as a nation, we borrowed over $15 billion. That's a huge money. That could have changed the whole country. You understand? And pay interest on such a huge debt from the meager, scarce foreign exchange earnings we make has been a big challenge to the country. And the Eurobond borrowing It's a special borrowing. I'm not saying it's a bad, no money is bad. It depends on how you use it. If it had gone into projects which could pay for themselves, would I be in a better position now? How was the money used? So the former Chief Justice has a point.
Are you surprised Ken Ofori-Atta is still at the Finance Ministry?
Well, we're told that he's managing the IMF program. Haven't you heard it?
I mean, that was the response to the calls for him to step aside. I mean, those who engaged the president and had made that call, they say that he didn't give an assurance that he was going to go after the IMF program. He said that, I mean, we are trying to manage it. Let's try and finish with the IMF deal. Then we'll have the conversation about your demands for him to step aside. I mean, do you think he should have been asked to step aside and replaced with someone else, perhaps some breath of freshness around that area?
You see, it's been said by a very wise man years ago that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created the problem. You understand? Do you understand me? Yeah.
So we need a new consciousness. He should go.
New yes. A team, not even him. I think the management team must be looked at.
As in the economic management team?
I think so. Because see, the other ones who, including the finance people, who created the problem, can they solve the problem? Especially when I hear some of them say that, oh, by the fact that we have been kicked out of the international market, we have got to borrow 3 billion, 2 billion. It means the same level of consciousness that created the problem. Hasn't seen the problem yet. They haven't seen that we have a problem. They haven't seen it.
Dr. Dufour. We'll take a break on JoyNews today. When we return, we'll bring you more. Welcome back to JoyNews today. Now to the rest of our stories. Illegal miners have taken over close to 1,000 hectares of farmlands at Ofuase in the Asante Achim South Municipality, polluting the River Anuru, the only water source in the area. But local authorities say they are overwhelmed and cannot do much in the face of emboldened local citizens and foreigners using Chanfan machines to pollute the river. But former MP for Asante Achim South and board chair of the Middle Belt Development Authority, Alex Korenchi, who led journalists there, accused local authorities of doing little to stop the destruction. Love FM's Rasa Sasari Donko led a team to Ofuase and now reports.
So how can a free-flowing, vibrant river become so stagnated, dirty, and polluted? This is the River Anuru, one of the largest in the Asante Achim South Municipality. Now, this is so polluted, you can see that there is no life in it at all. And those who are polluting it go as far as 6 villages downstream. Now, this one, we are going to go along it and try to find out who is polluting the River Anuru and what can be done to salvage it.
Residents of Ofuase are mainly farmers, growing cocoa, rice and vegetables. The River Anuru has been a lifeline to agriculture here. But illegal mining has changed the fortunes of the people. The river, our only source of water, is highly polluted. So we have to hire motorbikes to fetch water from the house to the farm to tend to our crops. Over 1,000 hectares of farmland has been turned into pits and gullies. The course of the River Anuru has been changed and the water highly polluted.
So we are very close to the sound of Chanfan sitting on the river. and we are snooping in on them to find out who is there.
We tracked the sound of champagne equipment to another part of the Nru River. Isaiah is not from Ofuase. He hails from Ashaiman in Accra. He and his friends are leaking engine oil and other pollutants into the Nru River. But he remains indifferent. I know all this pollutes the river, what we are doing here. I cannot say I don't feel bad about it. But former MP for Santiachim South and board chair of the Middle Belt Development Authority, Alex Kwaku Kranche, blames local authorities for doing little to stop the degradation.
I'm really sad and appalled by what I have seen today. The assembly members, I was told, or I'm told, they are all involved. The policemen, the chiefs, they are allegedly part of what is actually happening in this area. Though I don't have the evidence, this is what I've been hearing from the citizens, that this is what they are doing. They connive with the galamseyers.
But Trafohene of Ofuase, Nana Debranza, has this reaction. We have the power as chiefs, but our subjects who are into this illegal business sometimes lie about where they operate. Sometimes they say they are operating within Nruso. I think all chiefs in the affected towns should be hauled before Otumfo. MC for Santiachim South, Alexander Frimpong, told Love News security agencies are overwhelmed. He says he has filed an appeal to RedSec for assistance. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Ofuase, Santiachim South, Ashanti region.
The mat always on this that washes directly back into the stream.
Report by Erastus Asaredonko. Let's take a break on Joy News today. When we return, there is business.
Hello, good afternoon. Let's do business now. I am Beverly Broom. The National Coordination Office of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFTA, program says a policy has been developed targeting the youth and women to spearhead the cross-border trade. According to the program's officer in charge of enterprise support and trade finance, Divine Kutoche, the policy would build capacities. He was speaking at the regional conference on the implementation of the AFTA agreement in Sunyani.
The AFCFTA offers us a whole opportunity. It allows for movement of persons and goods. So what it means is that we are expecting a lot of people to come selling their goods here to compete with us. So Ghana has to position itself properly to be able to also send more goods outside. And so our target here are the youth, the women and youth. I mean, data shows that globally, top 25 countries that have the youngest population are in Africa. And in 2019 alone, 60% of our population are below the age of 25. And you know that cross-border trade, women and youth occupy close to about 80% of that. So if AFTA is going to really work, for me, it is the youth who are going to spearhead it. So the National AFTA Coordination Office, in our national policy framework, we have developed a policy for women and youth in cross-border trade, where we provide them the requisite skills, the tools, the finances, the machinery and all of that. You know, we also identify that they mostly are into pockets of productions where their packaging seem to not compete well. So it's a sector that we have even focused on to be able to help them in packaging of their products and also providing them market intelligence. We are currently organizing a market expedition to Kenya. We will be doing that somewhere in May. And it will surprise you that most of the people we consider to take along are women and youth. So we are encouraging the youth to know that after its implementation is all to us. We are the future leaders and we should take advantage of it.
Now, Senior Business Development Manager at Farmerline, Princess Anita Sabere, has reiterated the need to educate farmers on the appropriate use of agricultural inputs in farming to prevent losses. In an interview, she said it was important for farmers to produce food, bearing in mind their market sizes, to prevent post-harvest losses and enable them to earn their intended profits.
If the farmers know the right chemical or input to apply, I'm sure we will not be having these challenges. Once they are educated as to how to even apply a fertilizer in the right amount, and then they are able to know the estimated yield at the harvesting period, these farmers are able to create the market for them. Because once you plant and you don't know how many, for example, tubers of yam potentially you're going to harvest, and then you look for a market for a lesser tubers of yam that you're going to harvest, obviously you're going to have post-harvest losses, right? So it starts with education. Let's just educate the farmers. Let's bring education closer to, let's give them the content that they can understand. Where can they access the market? How do they apply this input? Where do they go to even access common information that they need? Where do they even access healthcare? All these are very critical. So it starts with education. And once we break through education for these farmers, the sky is the limit in terms of growing more food and even creating markets, both locally and internationally. For some time now, input has been very expensive that the farmers could not even afford it. Farmerline has a model called the input finance and even asset finance, and where we grant farmers access to inputs such as fertilizer and seeds at a very agreed long-term period of payment, right? It's given to them on credit, and then they have very flexible mode to pay us back after application based on the agreement that we have with them. Yes, so that is our means of financing these farmers. And to talk of assets, we also provide some, I think we started asset last year. We provide some sort of assets for agribusinesses, assets like tractors, threshers, combine harvesters, as the demand will come from the SMEs and the agribusinesses that we work with.
Do visit myjoyonline.com/business for more business stories. I am Beverly Broom.